So, Transformers The Last Night was exactly the way I felt about the first four Transformers movies, in which they are very visually cool. They have cool visuals and cool action, but the story and the humor are so bad that I don't hate these films at all. Any of the five, or the five live action Michael Bay ones, but I think that these movies aren't, as films, good at all. Really, I don't think that. Besides the sound design and the visuals, the CG is really good, and the action is good, but the story and the characters and the writing is so bad. So I think that I, again, like the first four, I'm really mixed on this one. I don't think that this one is any better or worse than the other four. Literally, it's so weird to have a franchise where even the first one, which a lot of people actually love, I really think that it's so similar to the other, to all five of them, that it doesn't really. I don't feel like it's better or worse than any of the other ones. I feel like all five of these movies give such a, they give the exact same feeling for me throughout all five of them, in which they are just borderline okay. They've got some okay things about them. They got some terrible things about them. So they're not the worst things ever, but they're not great. And this one is definitely the same as the other ones. It's so weird that we got five films that are exactly the same as one another, for me at least. But this one is interesting because we had the trilogy with Sam Witwicky, Shia LaBeouf, and now we're getting, if Mark Wahlberg comes back, we're gonna maybe be getting a trilogy with him, and this will be the second one in the trilogy. But we got the second Mark Wahlberg movie where Cade Yeager is apparently in hiding now. And I'm going to try to keep this as spoiler free as I can, even though you already know what's going to happen in a Transformers movie. But I'm going to just talk about what's in the trailers, like that part of the story. I'm not going to talk about what happens at the end, even though we already know what's going to happen. It's a Transformers movie, it's just like the other ones. But I'm not going to say it regardless. But Cade Yeager is apparently in hiding now, and we meet this little girl named Isabel, who, funny enough, wears a scarf and goggles and lives in a junkyard and has a robot buddy named Squeaks. That's a little round robot. Doesn't this sound familiar? That is in a world where the hero is missing and people are trying to find him, or he's just trying to find something else, Optimus Prime. So that seems so much like Rey, doesn't it, from The Force Awakens, from Star Wars Episode 7. So much so that it was just so weird that this character was so much like Rey. She was just a 14-year-old kid instead. We know what happened to her parents in this movie, unlike Rey, but that's a trilogy that's going to elaborate on that as it goes along. But the character Isabel, the 14-year-old girl, who is like Rey, so much like her, that I just was so annoyed that she was exactly the same almost, down to having a robot buddy. It's weird, because even though Rey wasn't huge friends with BB-8 in Force Awakens, she was still with him for a while. So I thought that was such a weird thing that they copied so closely on that. And then they make a joke halfway through the movie about this butler robot, and somebody calls him a C-3PO ripoff, which I thought was so funny because they're ripping off Star Wars anyways in this whole movie. With that subplot character, who, this isn't a spoiler either, but she does not have a reason to be in this movie, that little girl, at all. There's literally nothing that is gained or earned with this character in the story besides the fact that Cade Yeager is introduced because of what happens in this stadium junkyard with her. But after that, she's literally in that part of the movie, and then the whole second act, even more of the whole second act, she's gone, completely non-existent in this movie, and she comes back in the third act and does nothing. And I thought that was so weird. That was such a weird reasoning to bring this character into this movie, but she does nothing. And it's a shame because this child actress, I haven't seen her, I don't know if I've seen her in anything else. I didn't look her up beforehand. But she was, for the lines that she was given, which aren't good lines, she was really actually good in this movie. Like, I was surprised. There was a scene where, even though the scene is so fast and it happens so fast with her crying to Cade Yeager, but she's the scene in the trailer where she says, "I want to fight them," and she's tearing up and crying, and she's like, "I want to go with you. I want to fight them." That was legitimately the best acted scene in the movie. Like, she was really good in this movie. And she shouldn't be, because this movie is not a movie that is a movie that's good, known for its acting, or this franchise at all. But she did a fantastic job in these lines that she was given. Even though the lines aren't good, but she made the best of them. She really did good in this movie, and I feel like she'll go on to bigger and better things because she did amazing in this movie. Like, even though she's barely in it, it really worked really well with her acting, but not with the movie or the lines or the writing at all. It was her own acting that worked, and worked for that with me, even though it doesn't work in the story. But yeah, she's kind of non-existent though, half of the movie. Actually, I'd say 75% of the movie, because she's in the first act and the third act. 75% of the movie she's gone, which was really stupid. I don't get why. And it didn't bother me that much because the character wasn't interesting. Even though her acting was great, the character wasn't written well or interesting like any of the other characters. But it was so strange that she was just suddenly gone for the whole movie almost. And it really blew my mind how they did that. But they did that in a lot of these Transformers movies, and I thought it was interesting in how, like all the other ones where they switch back and forth between characters, they really did that a lot in this one. But I feel like the characters in this, even though there were a lot that were completely pointless and were just there to start humor and humorous jokes for no reason, besides to make the audience laugh at some idiotic joke, it didn't bother me as much as the other ones. It wasn't as annoying. I don't know. I mean the jokes, don't get me wrong, were really not good. They really didn't work, for the most part. There were some funny jokes, but not a lot of them worked. I think probably 60% of the jokes for me just fell completely flat, and then there were a couple that I actually legitimately thought were funny, like with the Robot Butler, who during a scene in a car where he's screaming, "I have road rage." Like, I thought that was really funny because it was just out of nowhere and it was just a weird what the fuck moment. But I thought that was funny. And I thought that Anthony Hopkins, for what he is given, even if he's saying stupid, childish things that they wrote for him, he makes the best of it. Because I love how in the trailers that they do this in every Transformers movie where they make it seem like he's going to be serious. But with Anthony Hopkins, where he is narrating in the trailer, and it seems like he's going to be the character that's going to be the smart, dignified character, because that's what we think of Anthony Hopkins, about how he is such a damn great actor. He's one of the best actors I think ever, and I think that he is so good, but I think it's so funny that they bring him in here and give him these stupid lines. Like, there's one line where, for some reason, I'm paraphrasing this, but he just randomly goes up to a girl and calls her a bitch. For some reason. And then there's a line where he goes up to somebody and calls him a dickhead. And he's vulgar because it doesn't make any sense at all. But it makes sense in this Michael Bay Transformers world that he has made, because we have had humping dogs and we've had parents who are annoying as shit, like the mother who got high in the second one, or Deep Wang, is that what his name was? That fucking guy on the third one, or the scrotum on one of the robots. So, like, this dumb humor is already set in this world. But it's just so funny that they bring in such a talented actor as Anthony Hopkins and give him these stupid-ass lines. And they're kind of funny, though, because he acts dignified whenever he says these lines, but it's just so odd. I could say this movie is just fascinating. It's a fascinating movie because it's not a good movie at all. but the way that the movie goes along, it just it's such a strange phenomena. It doesn't feel like it's cohesive. There's so many characters that are not needed, so many subplots that are not needed like the other ones. Um, but it's so strange at how it works out in the end when it's the same ending as the other ones. But it just feels so odd. It's just such an odd movie and an odd franchise that keeps going and people still love it. And I mean, I don't love this franchise. I can still watch them. I can still watch. I could honestly watch this one again because it is so fascinatingly bad. Um, but it's not one that I love to rewatch. But I think that there are things that I can still enjoy, like the visuals. I think are really good. The CGI is really well done in these movies, and the action is really good. But like I said, the story and stuff sucks. But I think that and in the same and in every movie, it's the same thing that happens in each one. But there are movies where I will completely give the benefit of the doubt of being just the same as this franchise that I love, like Friday the 13th. I love those movies for the most part, most of them. But I love most of those movies, and I can watch those over and over again, and those are pretty much the exact same plot in every movie as well. So I'm not going to blame somebody for liking this one. I think that if you like this movie, like it. Like, if you like this franchise, like it. I think it's okay. I think that it's one I can watch again, but I don't. It's not one that I watch a lot because sometimes it is too stupid. There are moments that are okay, and there's some moments that are not great at all. But I just thought that it's just a fascinating movie. It's fascinating to watch Michael Bay because the way that he directs is he's got some good things about him. Like I said, the sound design and the visuals and the action, I think, are really top-notch spectacles. Like in these movies, they really do bring something in these movies. They work really well on those turns. But in terms of the characters and the writing and the humor, it doesn't work for the most part at all. But I can still laugh at a couple of things that are so weird that they just randomly make me laugh because they're so out of the norm. But I just think it's so funny how this movie is like the other ones, and it's fascinating that it keeps being the same one throughout. But I don't hate it at all. I really didn't hate this movie. I don't think it's the worst movie so far this year. There's been way worse than I've seen but this year so far, but I think that this one really is not. Like, I can see completely why people think it's bad and why the critics think it's bad. But for me, I thought it was fine. It was a fine, dumb, over the top action movie with some gigantic spectacle that is cool, but everything else just is not great at all. But besides that, it's just okay. It's not any better or any worse than the other four. And I think that it's fine. But I think it's cool that they did bring back some characters in this one that they had in the other movies. Like Josh Duhamel comes back in this movie, and I thought that it was kind of cool how he comes back and he doesn't bullshit around with the government trying to not underestimate these Transformers because he dealt with it in the first three, so he understands what is going on with them. So I like bringing him back and having that as a little plot, even though it's a small plot point in the movie. But I thought that it was fine. I thought that was cool bringing him back, and then John Turturro, which he's in this movie, but he is barely in this movie. He's got a couple scenes, and I love that John Turturro is fighting neck and neck to try to get back in this franchise. And I can't remember if he was in the fourth one or not. I think he was, but I can't remember. I remember he's in the third one at least. I know he's in all. He was in the first three. I just can't remember if he was in the fourth one. But he is fighting neck and neck to be in this movie, and he's barely in it. He's not. He doesn't interact with any of the other characters except for Anthony Hopkins' character. But it's so funny that he's trying to get in this movie so hard, you guys. He's trying to get in here, and he's in a couple scenes. He's never brought back again. So it's so weird that he's even in this movie. But again, this movie is just okay for me. It's definitely not the worst movie for me. I think it's a little entertaining enough, not greatly entertaining, but okay to to gradually say that this is not the worst movie I saw this year. Definitely not. The Bye Bye Man, of course, I hated that fucking movie. That's my least favorite movie this year so far. Horrible piece of shit. I thought that was the worst movie this year for me. But this one, I can see why you would think this is the worst this year, but I don't think so. I think it's just harmless, dumb fun. And it's the kind of dumb fun that I can tolerate. So, overall, just okay, dumb fun. But anyways, guys, thanks so much for watching, and I'll talk to you guys next time.